Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui whakahirahira I te rā nei. Me mihi ka tika ki te mana whenua, ki te ati awa, tēnā koutou katoa. Kei ako rangatira tēnā koutou ki a tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Mōrena e te whānau, it's great to be back for the second day of the LIANZA 2021 conference. Ko Michelle Eckert toko ingoa. I am still your kai whakataki for today. If you're joining the conference for the first time today, a very warm welcome to you. We're really pleased to have you here with us. Those of us who were here with us yesterday might notice that I have a change of scene. I have Marie Kondoed my life quite clearly. We've been having a little bit of a glitchy thing with me. I was a bit wooey yesterday. We're talking about the internet rather than the personality. So I've set myself up somewhere with a better internet connection, and we're going to track that today and see if we can get it as smooth and as bright and as sharp as we possibly can. But weirdly, today is not about me. I always find that a bit surprising, but I push on through. Yesterday was filled with amazing stories. It was oozing with wisdom and knowledge. If you missed anything, or if you even weren't here yesterday, remember you can watch all of the recordings of each session when you have some spare time. This is a FOMO-free zone. You get to see everything over time. And I hear really wonderful things about last night's networking function. The photos on the Kōrero stream look just amazing. Lots of people dressed up, beautiful outfits, cats scared of feather boas, all of the good things. I also hear that some people at the end of the official event took it over to Zoom, which is totally the 2021 equivalent of going downtown to a bar afterwards. So well done you. I'm very proud of you. You're my favorite people. All right, a few reminders about today. The fun theme for today is LIANZA and libraries. Don't miss the quiz at morning tea time. This one will challenge your library knowledge. I can report that yesterday we had 158 people who took part in the quiz. They gave it a jolly good crack. And 10 people got all the answers right. So those 10 people go in the draw to win some very special chocolates. Now, little note, if you can't see the quiz link at morning tea time, I know some people had some issues yesterday, refresh your page up by your profile on the right-hand side of your screen on the platform, and that should absolutely fix it. So if you're into competitions, and I feel that you are, this is what I'm learning about you. I think you are very much into the competitive spirit. You can keep an eye on how you're doing at all times. Just click on the little gold trophy up there at the top of the platform and see what you've been awarded so far. The more active you are in the platform, the more points you get awarded. So ask questions in sessions. In the breaks, go visit the sponsors. Connect with people, watch a talk in the presentation gallery. All of those things are ways to earn points. And for every 100 points you earn, you go in the draw to win vouchers. There are $200, $100 and $5 $50 Prezi cards up for grabs. Now today's presentation gallery, that's just over on your right of the screen. It's open there with Wednesday's talks. This is a really valuable place for you to find additional papers and lightning talks. New talks are released there every day, and they will be posted here again at the end of the conference, so you can watch them whenever you want over the coming months. Remember, if you're having any technical troubles, we have live support in place for you. Simply go up to the live support icon in the top right-hand corner of the platform, and our lovely online team will help you. All right, beautiful people. It is time now to hear from two renowned international experts. And I want to say a huge thank you to NZMS for their support in sponsoring this session. National Librarian Rachel Esson recently caught up with Bodleian librarian Richard Ovenden. Let me tell you a little bit about Rachel, though lots of you will know her really well. She's got a strong academic background in the library and information sector and significant involvement with LIANZA as immediate past president. She's been with the National Library of New Zealand, Te Puna Mātaurangi or Aotearoa, since 2012, when she joined after roles at Vic University and the University of Otago School of Medicine and Health Sciences and various other organisations. Now, Richard Ovenden has been Bodlei's librarian in the University of Oxford since 2014. The Bodleian has been a library for legal deposit for over 400 years, which I believe is longer than the Levin Public Library. I need to check that, but I'm fairly sure I'm right. So Richard is the director of the Bodleian Library's Centre for the Study of the Book, which sounds adorable. He's also a member of the American Philosophical Society, the treasurer of the Consortium of European Research Libraries, and the president of the Digital Preservation Coalition. And he was awarded an OBE in 2019. So together, these two delightful people have a lot to talk about. So let's sit back and hear what they have to say.
Kia ora, ko Rachel Te Pouhuaki o Te Puna Mataranga o Aotearoa. I'm the National Librarian of New Zealand, and it's my very great pleasure to welcome Richard Ovenden, OBE, who is Bodlei's librarian. Richard's been Bodlei's librarian since 2014 and has worked at the Bodleian since 2003. He was the keeper of special collections and then deputy librarian. Richard's the treasurer of the Consortium of European Research Libraries and president of the Digital Preservation Coalition. He's also the author of Burning the Books. I'm just going to give a little promo there. A History of Knowledge Under Attack, published in 2020, and I'm delighted that he's agreed to a conversation for our conference this year. So, Richard, a bit of a warm-up question. How did you get into librarianship? Was it a lifelong ambition, or did you just fall into it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much indeed, Rachel, for inviting me to participate in the conference. I'm extremely sorry that I can't actually be with you in person, and but this is, I guess, the next best thing. So to answer your question, it wasn't really a lifelong ambition. I'd been taken to my local public library by my mum when I was a child, and so it was a kind of natural place to go to. And as a teenager, the public library had really transformed my own horizons through reading, through access to books. We didn't have very many in the house when I grew up. My parents were working class. They hadn't been to university. They were too busy to read. But they were very encouraging. They felt it was a very kind of positive thing. So libraries were sort of in the background as kind of good places and places that I felt very comfortable. But then when I went to university, I got a job in my college library. And I think that was really the start of it all. And in particular, I was given the job of moving what was called the secondary sequence, the kind of stuff that people had crammed into an old cellar because it wasn't useful anymore for kind of the day-to-day support of students. And I was told to kind of move this to enlarge the college bar. And I was paid over the summer vac to do it, which was great. And my dad was really keen that I was actually earning money. So, but in there, I found all sorts of amazing things, early printed books, medieval manuscripts. And I went across to the university library and asked for some advice. You know, can someone help me? What should I do with these things? And I was shown to the door on Palace Green Library in Durham with somebody who had a brass plaque on the door and it said, Keeper of Rare Books. And I thought, ooh, I like the sound of that. And it was a wonderful woman called Beth Rainey who was absolutely instrumental in showing me what an interesting, challenging, absorbing, compelling job being a librarian was. And she hired me to be a trainee librarian after I graduated, and that was it.
Wow, what a great story. And I definitely do like the keeper titles. We don't have those here. We have curators, but I'm quite keen to explore bringing that back. So,
yeah, well, perhaps we'll come on to it later on in our conversation again.
Thank you. So COVID-19 has presented numerous challenges globally. Can you share with us what impact COVID has had on the Bodleian and how you've managed that?
Well, like all of our colleagues tuning into this broadcast, I think it's been absolutely shatteringly impactful. And, you know, back in March the 17th, 2020, we had to close the doors of our physical library spaces to our readers in Oxford, and we shifted to fully digital, fully working from home pretty much instantly. And we've operated over since then in a bit of a kind of a yo-yo fashion, you know, sort of in and out of physical operation, in and out of on-site working, but with a, you know, with quite a profound growth and extension of our existing digital services. And I think that's one of the real lessons for me, was that libraries tended to actually do quite well in the pandemic. I think we'd invested in digital infrastructure, digital collections, digital services before the pandemic for the most part. And we were therefore ready to shift into an operation where our readers were only able to access those services, those collections in digital form. And so we established ourselves with a kind of a strap line on the 17th of March, which was keep Oxford reading. That was our mantra. That was a hashtag for our social media and the way that we communicated with our readers, our community. And so expanding the range of electronic resources we joined the Hattie Trust Emergency Temporary Access Service, which was transformational. We developed a scan and demand service, which was, you know, very, very extensive. We scanned over 1.5 million pages during the pandemic so far, because a lot of those services we've kept in place. Even though we may contract some of them. For example, our live chat service we had running 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Now we're going to pull that back, as we're now in the happy position of having sort of reopened all of our reading spaces without restriction. And so obviously we're ready to flex back. And I think that's one thing which libraries, including the Bodleian, have shown, is just how agile we are as organizations. We can adjust and blend our services to suit the public health circumstances that we find ourselves in. So, you know, we're ready to change again. And I think our mindset has definitely been altered. And we've also shown actually how effective a sort of blended mode of on-site and working from home can be for our workforce. And again, I don't think we're going to go back to everybody just default coming into the office.
That sounds fantastic. And I'm interested just to explore a little bit more about I suppose your staff and their skills and their skill development with that shift. Was that something that they were kind of really ready for and that it enabled them to thrive, or did it require a bit more kind of nurturing and this is you know how we can help you develop those skills?
Yeah, I think probably all of the above. I think there were a fantastic group of staff. Well, I would say overall, I think our staff really proved themselves in the pandemic, but in terms of their skills and their ability to operate, there was a big range. And some of that was due to the kind of jobs that they normally did and how they suddenly had to do something that was very different, that wasn't physical site-based, but that was working from home and doing it online.
Mm.
So there was some training that we had to put in place, and we, some of our staff developed very innovative video training so that that could be cascaded across the organization to people in working from home. For others, their ability to join in this process depended on their home circumstances. So, were they caring for somebody? Did they have children running around at their ankles? Did they have a quiet space? Did they have good internet connections? All of those things impacted on the ability of staff to kind of engage with this process to keep Oxford reading. And we were able to solve some of those problems, allowing people back into the office to collect their office chairs or whatever it might be and take them home. And we were able to purchase more laptops and other equipment, and as money and supply allowed us. But there were some staff who simply couldn't work. We couldn't either, for various reasons, find a way to include them. So we were fortunate to be able to use the government furlough scheme, and that enabled us to, and I was very at pains. I did a daily email for, almost the entire duration of the pandemic. And I was at pains to point out that those staff on furlough were contributing just as much as those staff who were working to the overall effort.
Yes, in New Zealand, we've had the team of 5 million has been our kind of rallying call. And it is recognising that people contribute in different ways and that we are all part of our response to COVID. So at the moment, as we're recording this, Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau moves to what we call our level 3 alert level this evening at midnight. And Wellington and the rest of the country has been at level 2 for a while, but we've just come out of a hard lockdown of 3 and 4 weeks. So it's a challenging time.
Yeah.
So onto the book. Can you tell us a bit about your book? What prompted you to write it, and why now?
Well, I guess there were probably 3 reasons. One sort of long-term, one very immediate, and one sort of in the middle. And I guess my kind of long-term concern was about the way that libraries and archives were treated in public discourse and how that affected things like funding. And I'm sort of very conscious of the declining funding, particularly for public libraries in the UK and other parts of the developed world, how the notion that libraries and archives were important was not being discussed in society enough. If you open the weekend newspapers, you might hear about museums, but you almost never heard about libraries, and certainly never heard about archives. So this was generally concerning me, and I wanted to do something about that. And then I was also sort of concerned about the place of preservation within our community in the world of libraries and archives, and seeing it sort of drift away from being at the forefront of our professional concerns and seeing kind of access. And we're an access organization, but my view has always been that you can't have access without preservation, and that preservation has other benefits that bring to society, the preservation of knowledge, I mean. I think the immediate concern was about, I actually read a newspaper article in the UK at the height of our political controversy around immigration policy. And that newspaper article revealed that the government department that was instigating our very extreme immigration policy, known as the hostile environment, that same government department, the Home Office, had destroyed an archive of documents which had been in there, which they had created and collected and kept but they destroyed it at the very time that they were instigating the policy. And that archive could have been used by the people they were targeting to prove their right to remain, their right to settled status in the UK. And it struck me that that was a perfect example of the social importance of the preservation of knowledge. It's not a sort of an abstract notion. It actually means something for people's lives, for their well-being, for their right to be citizens. Then, you know, these are kind of core concerns, it seems to me. And if those documents had been kept and made available to those individuals, lives could have been saved. And that prompted me to write an op-ed piece for the Financial Times newspaper, which got published a few days later. And the next day, a publisher wrote to me and said, this would make an interesting book. And here we are. So that was April 2018.
Yes, I think one of the challenges our institutions face is that we are in the business of the long term, and we are funded by people who are more interested often in the political cycle, which is fairly short term. And so that ability to advocate and to demonstrate the value of the knowledge that we hold is so important. And I think sometimes we're not very good at doing that. We're very busy at doing the doing and not gathering that evidence or really demonstrating that value. And it is through stories like the one you've shared where you can recognize the importance of keeping that information. So on the other side of that, one of the challenges that libraries often face is that sometimes we do need to remove books. And this can be interpreted as an act of vandalism. How do we channel that support, that passionate support our supporters feel for protecting books into something productive that can benefit all library users?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite interesting seeing a lot of this on media recently. And I did actually put in my introduction to my book about that, you know, libraries regularly, sensibly de-accession and, you know, books are not needed, and the archives weed at the point of, you know, appraisal and cataloging. You know, we can't keep everything all forever, and there are sort of respected professional techniques that, you know, we routinely apply. And I think it's about allowing the public to understand the challenges of our profession, opening our doors, sharing our techniques, sharing our challenges. And I think that if we can show that we also work together as libraries, that no one library is an isolated institution, that we talk to each other, that we share networks, that we share collection development and retention policies, that we look out for each other, and that, you know, we're not being, you know, sort of completely ignorant in the way that we you know, sensibly, routinely dispose of collections. So it's about that dialogue with our community. And, you know, at the end of the day, libraries, I think their great strength is that their communities trust them. And I think that, you know, we can't be complacent about those levels of trust. And over things like de-accessioning and weeding, we've got to bring the community along with us. And that means work. And it also means part of the skill sets of librarians need to be very, even more so. I mean, I think they've changed enormously in my time in the profession, but they need to change further to enable those kind of dialogues and that kind of nuanced communication to be undertaken.
I think that's really useful, and particularly the message about libraries being part of a network, part of a global network, and that no library can keep everything, that we all work together. And it is part of that thriving together. And I think now more than ever, where we do need to share, where some countries will be, their libraries will be physically closed, but they may be able to access digitally something from another country. That's where we can work together as that network. So yeah, I really absolutely agree with that. I was interested to note in your book that you speculate that part of the fame of the Library of Alexandria may have been because of its liberal access policy. So can you talk to me about how important accessibility is to knowledge contained in libraries? And you've talked a little bit about how COVID's provided an opportunity to improve accessibility. Do you have any other things to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately there's no point in keeping stuff unless people can use it. That's to me the kind of bottom line, and being able to make it clear what you have collected, what the policies are, telling some of the stories around collections which have been less well exposed or less well used is a great skill that libraries should be constantly undertaking. And it continues to enrage me when you read these kind of lazy journalistic accounts saying that something was discovered in a dusty archive or a dusty library. And I never allow these things on social media to go uncommented by yours truly, because libraries and archives are, they keep things very great care and detail, and that's why things are discovered by scholars or journalists or users, because of that professional approach and those kind of generations of improving access. And I think that's all part of the story that we continue to need to tell and to retell. And so I think, yeah, that Alexandria had this community of scholars around it, a college in the museum, and they were able to have access to this great store of knowledge that the library had accumulated. And its fame was partly because people knew about what was in it through reading the work of great scholars, through Pliny, through Euclid, through Archimedes. These were life-changing events when those scholars created new knowledge from the knowledge that they found in the library. And that's something that we need to celebrate, because it happens constantly in libraries all over the world. And my book was really about when that can't be done because of attacks of various kinds. We need to shout about that. We need to complain and protest and do as much as we can to draw the public's attention to what is at risk.
Yes, I completely agree. And of course, the other type of material that is really at risk is digital. So born digital, social media in particular. And we were delighted to read in your book the acknowledgement of the work that the National Library is doing in collecting social media and Facebook. But it's the tip of the iceberg. And I think one of the things that we're grappling with is the fact that we can't be comprehensive when it comes to collecting digital. But what kind of impact do you think that might have?
Well, libraries and archives are not neutral organizations, and they betray the policies and the approaches and the techniques and the I guess the biases of the people who are responsible for them at any one given time. And I think that I'm also a historian, and so one is acutely aware of the use that historians in particular make of libraries and archives, and how their interpretation of the past is dependent on the the data, the records that survive from it. And so we have to bear that in mind. And I think I'm a great believer in trusting the skills of our professionals, but we have to do as much as we can to alert our professionals to the dangers that their predecessors, the approaches that some of their predecessors have taken that have been, if you like, problematic. The biases, the hidden voices of race and gender that are now, if you like, built into our archival record of the past. We need to try and be aware of those challenges when we make decisions about what to keep and what not to keep. We don't want to revisit those kinds of mistakes, I think. And so it's a very, it's an absolutely vital task, choosing what to keep, and particularly in a digital world when it's layered with complexity and it's layered with additional cost. And that's why we need to work together. So that collaborative effort needs to be emphasized in the digital world. We need to be working with record creators earlier than we are used to. We can't, it's no longer fine just to wait for somebody to die to take on their, their personal papers. We need to work with them while they're still alive, while they're still creating the archive. And so there are all sorts of technical, ethical, financial, organizational, professional issues that need to be addressed. And I think as a community, we're doing really well, actually, in addressing those. I think funding is one critical issue because we continue to have the legacy of the past in analog form to preserve, and we must not shy away from that. But we have this additional burden, which is the digital of the present and the future. And that's where we need to be articulating to society and to funding bodies, to governments, more loudly, with greater skill and tactical nous about how to get more money to do this. And this is a constant, and we just need to absolutely continue at it. And one of the ideas that I moot in my book and elsewhere is the idea of a memory tax on the big tech companies to deal with digital preservation as an issue. Just one 0.5% on their profits would be absolutely transformational.
I'd love to see that come in. I'd like to end, because I think we're coming up to the end of our time, but I'd like to end with one last question, which is looking to the future, say 100 years from now, will we still have libraries in the way we have them now?
I think we will, actually. I think they will change. They will continue to evolve and develop. I think we will continue to have collections. We'll continue to have analog collections. We'll continue to have digital collections. I think the space of a library will continue to be valuable, the kind of reading space, the quiet, quiet spaces, but also spaces for conversation, for meeting, for community of one kind or another. And I think during the pandemic, as we had to restrict access to the physical spaces of the library, the demand for those from our young people in Oxford was just absolutely phenomenal. Even in a digital age when we were providing digital services of, incredible power and range, the physical space of the library is still an absolutely vital part of what we do. So I think libraries will, I'm sure libraries are still going to be here in a century. They will undoubtedly have changed. The blend between the physical and digital will undoubtedly have altered, but those two elements will fundamentally still be there, and we will still be at the heart of our communities.
I'm sure we will too, because the value that we provide, as you said, in terms of those community spaces and where people connect with each other, as well as the knowledge that we hold in our collections. Have I got time for one last question? I hope so, which is, can you tell us what you're reading at the moment?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Well, I have to read fiction before I go to sleep at night, and I'm reading Hilary Mantel's The Mirror and the Light, the last of her trilogy about Thomas Cromwell. It's a huge book, so I'm really kind of deep into it at the moment. And then I'm actually reviewing a book which is, would you believe, here it is, it's on my desk, The Library, A Fragile History by Andrew Pettigrew and Arthur van der Veduven, which is to be published by Profile next month. And it looks to be a really important contribution to our field. They're two eminent historians at St Andrews University, and I'm enjoying it at the moment very much. So. Don't want to spoil.
No, don't give anything away.
I won't give anything away.
And you read physical books?
I do, actually, yes, and particularly when I'm reviewing, because I'm an inveterate scribbler in the margins and note taker, so I find it much easier to do that in physical form. And I also I have multiple notebooks, physical notebooks, and I find that I remember things better if I write stuff in a physical notebook rather than typing it into my laptop. And I've spent so much time on a screen that actually there's a real physical pleasure of reading the page and writing with a pen.
I completely agree. And there's research that backs up the you better recall if you read something physically. Anyway, yeah. We are at time. So Richard, thank you so much for answering those questions, for the discussion. I found it fascinating. I could talk to you for a lot longer, but I really appreciate you joining us from your home in the early hours of the morning. And it's been wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure. Ka kite.
Kokere, kokere, kokere. Wakarongo ake au ki ngā reo o te motu e karanga mai ana huakina te ware. Kaoti ngā mai e. Haere mai e te iwi ki a pirita ua, kia ki te atu ai, ngā kupu whakairi e. E nei ngā wariu, o ngā mai tuinga, e mai ke tu, ngā whakaro rereke. Ko hanga whakatu, ngā ria ki te wi. E kore e mimiti, he puna wairua e.